Thank you. Good morning. It's good to be with you all, and so thank you for coming to my class. And I also want to say thank you to, very briefly, to Fred Powell and the good folks at NTC for inviting me and including me in just such a terrific event. I've sort of been bouncing back and forth this week between here in Cincinnati and not able to attend everything, but I was at the concert last night, and which was just absolutely phenomenal. And I hope that as the week has gone on, that you all are just sort of inspired and renewed to just keep doing what we do, because I think we can all agree that not everyone is as lucky as us in the world where we can meet together and play the trumpet. And we're lucky because we get to do that, and this is what we love to do. So I feel like that's important. So thank you to NTC and to Fred and everybody for including me. So I have some notes to try to keep me on track, but you can ask any of my students that it rarely works. So this is they call this the warm-up session, and so I'm going to talk a little bit, probably a lot. And then we're going to play a little bit also. And so as I go through this, perhaps maybe a little bit at the end, we'll have a little bit of time for questions. And so if you think of something, you can please, there will be a time at the end if you want to ask those questions. So first of all, as I mentioned earlier, this is supposed to be the sort of like warm-up session, and I feel personally that the first practice session of the day is a fairly personal thing, and I feel like it's something that we have to develop over time, and preferably with the teacher to help us succeed. And it's a little difficult to do that as a group, but I have a few things that we can do together that I think you'll find helpful. So I hope that with my session today, will accomplish two things. One, I hope it will confirm what you already feel and believe about the first practice session of the day. And two, I hope it will give you something to take back with you wherever you came from, to consider, to think about, to bring back to your students and to your peers, and that will help you in the future. And I also hope to hear back from you if something worked or if something didn't work. You can scream at me later on. So let me there's an issue with terminology that I want to clear up just off the board. This and maybe it's an issue, maybe it's something that we all already know, but that's the issue with this term, the warm-up. I don't use that term for a variety of reasons. One, it has the sort of connotation that it's okay if we sound bad, or it's okay, we're just getting warmed up, or that sort of thing. Also, we're not increasing the temperature of anything. If that's all we needed to do, then drinking coffee would make us ready to play the trumpet. And if that were the case, I would be perpetually ready for action. Because as my good friend Matt Anklin knows, coffee hour lasts from 5 a.m. to 5 a.m. So there's that. Obviously I'm not a medical doctor, but some people say, well, you're kind of increasing the blood flow. I don't think that's true. I mean, you could just kind of go like that and be ready to go. That's not what we're doing. So I just use the term practice because that's what we're really doing. After about 3-4 minutes, we should really be ready to play within reason, just about anything that we really need to play. My very good friend John Schlabach is over here, and I'm glad he's here because John and I play in the West Virginia Symphony Orchestra together. You will never hear a better Flight from Neverland than John and Maya's. Yes, and and many times we have to play enormous concerts on very little time. The bus gets there late, or whatever the case may be, and we have 5 minutes before the show starts. So it really shouldn't take that much time to get ready to play. So it's really just practicing, okay? At least the way that I consider it. So what's the difference? And the other thing that I want to mention is, for years, both as a student and as a teacher, I walk by the practice rooms, or I'm sitting backstage before, or in the locker room, whatever the case may be, before before the service, and some of these sounds that I'm hearing from people, want to go, what are you doing? But I never walk into anybody's practice room. You can ask any of my musicians. I never do that, because I respect that time as being sacred and your time for figuring things out. But the question is, what's the difference between playing and practicing?
Practicing has intention behind it.
Right. Practicing, the difference between playing and practicing, a plan. Okay? And so asking yourself the question, what am I doing? What am I hoping to achieve by playing this or that exercise? And then asking yourself, did I achieve that? And is it working for you? If it's not working for you, then you have to either make sure you're doing it right. For example, I had an individual come up to me at some point and say, yeah, I tried the stamp, but that didn't really work for me, the stamp, exercise. I said, it didn't work for you? What do you mean it didn't work for you? This is one of the most respected methods. What do you mean? I said, you're probably not doing it right. Here, let's check, and then we did a few things. Well, it turns out this person wasn't doing it right. And, as soon as he started doing it right, everything was centered, the sound opens up, and everything. And I said, oh, see, you just have to follow the instructions. So if you're doing it right and it's not working for you, you have to make an adjustment. So really, this session is really like setting yourself up for the day of playing, and that's going to be different depending on what your line of work is. Okay, so if you're one of these guys like last night that's playing the high Z's, and everything, then what you do might be a little different than what I do. I don't think I've ever played a double C in my life. I was just telling Jason that. But on the other hand, I've never had to. It's like, that doesn't come up very often in Shostakovich and Mahler. So it's, so the practice session, obviously, I think, has to be tailored for setting yourself up for whatever it is that you have to do. Okay, and so that being said, I draw a lot of inspiration from this from other sources. I like to read, I like to observe, I like to be present. And a lot of my good friends are very serious runners, And I don't mean the kind of runners that like, oh yeah, I run around my neighborhood once every other Saturday. I mean, they're the ones that are doing the Boston Marathon like, 5 times and, winning these races and everything. And you know what they do before they do a race, before they run? You know what they do to get ready? They run, they jog, They don't ever do this number. You see some runners like kind of doing like this number to stretch and like do these things. They don't do that. They participate in what's called dynamic stretching, which is they get ready to do what they're going to have to do by doing what they're going to have to do. It's pretty simple, like it's pretty streamlined. So I try to incorporate that also. Couple of final thoughts before we play. I think that practicing starts with a concept. You have to, we all collectively, we have to know what we're trying to achieve before we start. So I mean that in 2 ways. Number one, understanding, like not only the exercise and everything that you're about to do, but also it starts with the listening. It starts up here, okay? If you, guys, there's plenty of chairs over here. Please come have a seat. If you can't list off a list of your favorite musicians and favorite trumpet players, that's going to be a problem, okay? Because if you don't know what you're trying to sound like, if you're not organized up here, okay, adding the trumpet's not going to help, So, you have to think, who's on your, if we went down the row, okay, who's on your Mount Rushmore of trumpet players? I know who mine are, but yours are going to be different, and that's okay. But at least that gives you a starting point, to be mentally focused in that practice session. So with that in mind, I'm gonna do a few things here that we can do together. And the way that I do the group warm-up situation is I do this once a week on Wednesdays at 7 a.m. I do this with my crew. And basically I'm just going to do that with you all. Now the way I do this is a little, of course you all are very advanced players, and so it's probably your warm-up could be twice as complicated as mine, your practice. I don't have a very complicated practice routine. Some people are very dogmatic about the practice. They want to hit the same things every day. Some people are not. Some people do a variety of things. I probably am more dogmatic than most. Because what I can do is take my practice routine that's, if you let me go, and like a lot of us, you know, we like playing the trumpet, we can just play for hours and just keep practicing other things. But I need to be able to shrink that down to just a few minutes at some time. So for that sake, for that reason, I try to be very dogmatic about the elements of my practice. But if I'm going to do a few things, I'm going to do some while I play the piano. And if the way I like to do this is, if you find that something that we do is maybe not what you're used to doing, and you're not comfortable doing that, then what I'll ask you to do is sustain the tonic pitch, okay, or sing the tonic pitch, because what the rest of us are going to do is latch on to that pitch, okay, and that's going to keep us, you know, centered. And as I said, most of you are very advanced players, so you won't need to do that. But if you take this back to your students, this might be a very good element to incorporate into like a more collaborative practice situation, because it allows everyone to participate, and it's what they need to do anyway. So also, I mentioned that other word, if you all don't have Whiff Rudd's book, The Collaborative Practice Elements, I think every trumpet player ought to have that. So we're going to start with the mouthpiece. And this is, for me, this is ear training, and this is sort of embouchure muscle building. So we're just going to start our good old friend C, concert B flat. Can everybody sing? Can everybody sing the G? Nice. So can we just, this exercise will just be, ready? Now, we're going to keep going here, and remember there's, we have two general rules for trumpet playing. This may apply to all brass playing, but who wants to play any of the other brass instruments? So who cares? And those rules are, the first rule is long notes sound louder than short notes. The second rule, which applies to this session, is high notes sound louder than low notes. So the reason I mention that is we're about to do some of these arpeggios descending into the pedal register. And as we do that, I want to encourage everyone to focus their energy on making sure that we do a little crescendo down to the bottom. And like Mr. Stamp taught us, as we go down, think up. And this is consistent. We're going to go down to the pedal register and then back up. And so this is consistent with many methods such as Stamp and Claude Gordon. additional note, let's make sure that we're trying to go directly to the center of the next pitch. So rather than Avate capito. Ready? As we go into the pedal register, if you don't feel comfortable in some of the lower notes, then again, sustain the next note that you feel comfortable with, and the rest of us will latch onto that for intonation, or sustain the tonic pitch. Make sense? Nice. The same situation here. As we go to the upper register, if you don't feel as comfortable there, then just hang out on the register where you do feel comfortable. Now we go down 3 octaves. Nice. I feel like it's important to do these exercises with number one, with the pitch sounding. Nobody's pitch is that good where they can, well, maybe somebody, but where they can do these sort of mouthpiece exercises without any sort of pitch sounding. For those of you, hopefully everybody at this point in our lives has the app Tonal Energy. So you can use that for a drone, at least a sounding drone. We were talking the other day about how, you know, if we added up everything that's in, you know, the cost of all the equipment that's in that Tonal Energy app, you know, when, for example, when I was in high school or graduated high school, it would probably cost, I don't know, 15 grand, you know, to get all that equipment, and we'd have to dedicate an entire room to it and run 220 because like the regular thing wouldn't work. And I think the app costs $3 or something, so hopefully everybody has that by now. But I would suggest either using the piano or setting that drone to a sound that you're actually going to have to match. Because we don't, that square wave is not something that we ever hopefully have to play along with. So I've gone through, because I'm a nerd, I've gone through all of them, and the two that I like the best are the oboe and the organ. So I have mine set to oboe, but I think it's important to have the drone or to match a pitch for something that you would actually have to match in real life, rather than something like that. Let's do, if everybody, we'll just do this sort of briefly. Again, this is more embouchure, sort of muscle building. If we can put the mouthpiece in the trumpet now, but remove your lead pipe. We'll just do this for a moment. I do mine like this so it doesn't fall on the ground, and it also keeps the weight of the instrument fairly similar. And if we can just start by sustaining this really nice, obviously it sounds like an animal call or something. It should be around an E flat. Ready? So you might be thinking, Stephen, what's the idea of putting your finger down? It doesn't matter. No, it absolutely doesn't. This is just sort of muscle memory for me. You don't have to do it, but that's what I do. So let's do that one more time. Ready? So if you find yourself a little bit low or one way or the other, then you might want to check this, make sure the airspeed and everything here is right, so that we're getting that E flat. One more time, concert E flat, our F. Ready? Now let's incorporate some articulation into this. So we'll do like a little call and response. Listen to that one again. And then you can do as much or as little of this as you like. One other exercise is can we try just sort of a low gliss? Ready? Ready? So So you heard what happened there was about half of the group like jumped down immediately. So that one is requires much more control to gliss, you know, down and up. So one thing that you can practice, and this I think for me might be a 1 minute line item, 2 minute line item in your practice, but that's up to you, would be do this a little bit until you can be able to gliss evenly down and up and then up and down. Some of the guys in the orchestra downtown start on like right in the middle of that one. That takes a lot of control, a lot of strength building. Okay, let me see how I'm doing on time. Okay, let's go to our favorite flow studies now. So we'll just do, everyone seems to have a different set of the flow studies, so I'll play it first. As we continue, consider your general position at the instrument. Okay, do you look like a professional trumpet player when you play, or do you look like a homeless person? Okay. B major. And if you don't feel comfortable with these exercises, again, please sustain the tonic pitch. The rest of us desperately want to latch on to that. B flat major. Did you hear it? See, some people were very brave just then, and they sustained the tonic pitch. Did you hear how much better everybody sounded when you did that? Everybody else latched on to that. That's very good. We can do it all together now. I won't be so nervous up here by myself. So now we're in A major, the national key of Italy. Hey! A flat. See, that's very good. That makes the whole group sound better. What was that line by, I read from Chris Gecker, the wolf draws its strength from the pack, and the pack draws its strength from the wolf. G major. F sharp. And F. Ready? I recommend everyone practice playing low F. I do. Now let's go to the one, again, this one goes to the third. But we're going to start in F. There's no rule that says you have to start these things in C major. Ready? 2. Now let's go back up. F sharp. G is not a good key for trumpet. If you extend this middle valve slide, then your Bs will be in tune. Ready? Replace your slide, A flat. Ready? Back to A major. Ready? B flat. B. And C. And so at this point, you could continue doing, I would go now personally to the one that goes to the fifth and do C down. It's a F. And then I would go to the one that goes up to the tonic, pitch the octave above, and do, F up to C. And so I'm going like this, the whole time, sort of expanding intervals. I want to talk about, before we go on to the Clark, another good thing to do is, come up with a plan for when you have to do, one of these first practice sessions, either early in the morning or at the hotel room or backstage, that'll get you to where you need to be a little bit faster. If you're using a practice mute, like any of the ones available, our colleague Matt Anklin back here has a very nice practice mute you may have heard of, the silencer. And there's a lot of other ones. But if you will use, I don't know where I picked this up. I may have picked this up from you, Matt. But if you, these little earplug things, I steal these. They just have them like backstage for us at orchestra, like for the string players, So I just steal them. And if you wear these like earplugs with the practice mute in, it feels as though you don't have a practice mute in at all. Because like all the sound is kind of like moving around up here, I guess. So it sort of resolves that issue of like feeling as though you need to play with like a lot of pressure, which some of those mutes require. Let's do some Clark. And what we're going to do is, at this point in the time we have left, we're not going to do all of this because I want to leave a couple of minutes for questions. We're going to start these, and then we're going to incorporate some other things into the Clark Technical Studies. Now, I'm a big fan of the Clark Technical Studies. I think if you can play the Clark Technical Studies, okay, studies 1 through 9. I do not play the 10th study. You guys know the one I'm talking about, the old German song. You know what he writes? Well, Mr. Clark writes on the instructions for that one. He writes, "This study demonstrates the virtually unlimited potential of the cornet." Yeah, it's limited. So if you look at the 10th study, you'll understand what I'm talking about. Some of my musicians confessed recently that they haven't looked past the second one. I thought, oh, you've got to be kidding me. But if you can play the Clark Technical Studies, and you can, if I can do it, anybody can do it, then there's probably nothing or very little in the actual trumpet repertory that you would not be able to play. So let's do some Clark, but let's incorporate some of the Schlossberg, okay, into the Clark Technical. So let's do the Clark first study, and let's start on let's do the one that starts on. Let's see, for me and the way I'm feeling at this time of the day, how about F sharp, number 13, first bass F sharp. I think it's sometimes a mistake, and again, you have to listen to your body and you have to know your own playing. Starting with the first Clark study in each one may be a mistake for you, okay? So if you are going to start the fourth study and maybe you're not comfortable in the key of F sharp, or you're not feeling like, you know, starting like that low in the register or in that key, starting with the very first one, that might be a huge mistake. It could be a huge turnoff for you with those exercises. So start in a key and in a range that's where you're going to experience success. That's the most important thing. Was it something I said? So let's start. This is line 13. It starts on F sharp. I'll do it first. So we're going to do. This is going to be Clark Schlossberg. Somebody saying something? That was a Schlossberg part. Ready? Here we go. 1, 2. So on and so forth. Get the idea? Now, as I hear this, I want to encourage everyone to really, really listen as you practice and study these. There's no, when it comes to the Clark technical studies, I mean, we almost have to bow our heads when we talk about that book. But you had to listen very carefully. There's no such thing as playing through them. This is not recreational, okay? You have to listen very carefully and pay attention to detail if you want to get out of it what that wonderful man wanted you to get out of it. So even from up here, I'm hearing, for example, let's just take the F sharp one. That's about how it should sound, okay? But going from G sharp to A, I'm hearing some finger issues. Your first finger has to go down immediately at the same time as your third finger goes up, or you get that blip. You know what I'm saying? That noise. And if that's happening when you're playing it slowly, it's going to happen when you play it fast, okay? And I've read just about everything that Mr. Clark ever wrote. And there's even, if you search on YouTube, there's even some audio of some interviews that he gave. These exercises, you know, some of you might be thinking, gosh, why are we playing this so slowly? He never intended for anyone to try to break land speed records. That's not the point, okay? The point is just control and evenness of playing and to get all these details worked out. Make sense? Any questions about that? Okay, let's move on. Let's do the Clark second study. Let's start and let's do our good old friend F major. Cue, set, and now. I want to say thank you to those of you who sustained the tonic pitch. You got it. And did you hear how much better the group sounded when you did that? That's the right idea. Also, pro tip, if you're in F major, C major, G major, to a certain extent D major, if you'll crack this middle valve slide, you'll find that the pitch settles a little bit on the thirds rather than having to manipulate your first valve the whole time. There's no technical advantage to doing all this. Okay, now let's take this. Let's take the same study and let's apply it to what. If this was my own individual practice, I'm going to apply that to what I have to do that week in the orchestra. Okay, so if we're playing, so let's do it one single tongue, fairly firm articulation. So. Every note's the first note to pictures. 2, set, and now. Now, this week we're playing the Ravel Piano Concerto. Easy Stravinsky. Ready, 2, set, and now. Okay. Now this week we're playing Carnival of Venice. Two, set, and now. Now we go to the next variation. 2, set, and now. Now we're playing lead for the, whatever big band. So we're going to play that up 3 octaves, whatever. We're not going to do that right now. But that would be, obviously if that's what I have to do in the orchestra that week, then then I'm going to spend some time in that area. So in these ways, what I'm trying to do is take my practice session and adopt it to whatever I have to do that week or the next week in the orchestra or in the ensemble. So we just have a minute or so left, and I want to open up the floor for any questions that you might have developed over the course of our brief time together. Matthew.
So obviously we're doing a truncated version of your warm-up. How much time do you dedicate to your personal warm-up each day?
Well, as much as possible. I try to get there an hour before the phone starts ringing, and people start coming by. So I try to dedicate the first hour of my day to just this, and if left unchecked, but I like playing the trumpet, and I like playing the Clark technical studies and everything. I mean, it's fun for me. So left unchecked, I could just keep going, but. I can play. I've worked on it. I've done it. I can play the Clark technical studies from cover to cover, except that 10th study in 90 minutes. And so I try to do that once or twice a month, varying the articulations and that sort of thing. Occasionally, I switch up the program and I do the Louis Davidson trumpet techniques instead of the Clark technical studies. If you all don't know the Louis Davidson trumpet techniques, I feel like that's probably the most organized way to practice that there is. And then, actually, so as Jason mentioned, I'm playing in Cincinnati this week, and the piece that we're playing is, it calls for 21 percussionists. So the back of the stage looks just like a regiment of percussionists, and I think percussionists are some of the best people. They're almost as good as trumpet players, almost. And a lot of my best friends are percussionists. Anyway, I'm staying with a friend of mine who's a percussionist in the orchestra, and there's other percussionists staying with him. And I remember I'm usually the first one downstairs making coffee and breakfast and so forth. and I'm doing this and everything, and one of the other percussionists comes downstairs and says, you know, we're envious of you trumpet players for a lot of reasons. You can just show up, pull your trumpet out, and start playing. You know, you don't have to go through all this setup that we have to do, you know, and that sort of thing. And I said, yeah, that's right. But he said, you know, one thing that I don't envy you all is what you have to do to sort of maintain this situation every day. And then if you want to get better, you have to do even more. And I thought, you know, that's interesting. I never thought of it that way, but that's true. So if you just want to maintain if we want to maintain where we are, then we have to develop this strategy and this sort of approach. Then, if we want to improve and we want to get better, then we have to tack on, you know, some other things. So that's probably more than you wanted to know, but probably like an hour in the morning, and hopefully another hour later in the day. But especially so for the benefit of you, you know, student musicians who are here right now, I would just encourage you as strongly as possible, every second you get, barricade yourself in that practice room, because as soon as you are no longer a student musician, you don't have that luxury, you don't have that time anymore, and you're on you know, I cannot emphasize enough how sort of fast-paced things are. Yeah.
If you have a very limited time for your warm-up, is there a single element you try to focus on more in your
Flow studies.
Flow studies?
Tone production. Because I think one thing that we can all agree on, well, hopefully we can all agree on it. If we can't, get out. I'm just kidding. Like, what's the most important aspect of playing any musical instrument? It's got to sound good, right? If it doesn't sound good, nobody wants to sit there and listen to all that. We've got too many options. I can just pull whatever that is up on Spotify and have a comparatively good recording. So I think that the first and foremost is it's got to sound good.
Do you maintain any of this fundamental practice only on B flat, or do you incorporate that to C trumpet, E flat, piccolo, whatever's coming up for you?
Well, only on B flat, but probably once a week, depending on what's coming up. And certainly once or twice a month, I do a more extensive version. Is I put every instrument out in front of me. So I have B flat, C, D or E flat, whatever I'm dealing with, and piccolo trumpet, you know, out in front of me. And so I'll give you an example. We only have a moment or so. So what I try to do is I'll try to do sort of an abridged version of this. Is I'll do an abbreviated, sort of a truncated, as Matt said, version of this study. So I'll take an abbreviated version of the Clark second study. Pretty close. I think I can get it even to blend even more. I would go back and do it again if you all weren't staring at me. And so the concept of this is so that I want to get as much blend as possible between the instruments and sort of reinforce the concept of these instruments are simply tools. Like, I'm not going to freak out because I have to change horns or something like that, you know. Are they going to sound exactly the same, particularly going to like the E and D, E flat and D and piccolo? Are they going to sound exactly the same? No, because they're physically different. They're made up of different stuff, you know, in a way. They may not sound exactly the same, but I want to get as much blend as possible. So I'll do that in the same key and try to get it to where if somebody was like standing outside my office, they wouldn't know I was switching instruments, so that I keep the concept of the B flat trumpet in all of the instruments. Does that make sense? Yeah. Nyram.
Question for you. You've won a bunch of jobs, and you play a lot. And I want to ask you about your take on preparing for orchestral auditions, because of course you are successful at that.
I mean, I've been very I've been very fortunate to experience a moderate amount of success in that area. I think, so when it comes to, okay, so when I talk about this, all right, so we have a lot of student musicians here, right? How many of you are performance majors? Education majors? Okay, other. Okay, you guys are in high school. Okay, all right. So the audition, okay, is exactly the same thing and exactly the same concept as an interview, okay, as a job interview. When you go play an audition for any ensemble, you're essentially interviewing yourself and your skills and your sound. And when you go to do a job interview, you're essentially auditioning yourself for that job. Makes sense? So it's the same thing. It's the same concept. So in terms of preparing for the audition, one, again, it goes back to the listening. Make sure that you're doing a lot of listening of high quality recordings. Okay, what's a high quality recording? Okay, if we're talking about an orchestral audition, you know, Chicago Symphony, San Francisco, okay, Los Angeles, Dallas, basically any orchestra that's in a city where there's like an NFL team is probably going to, you know, be a pretty decent bet. If you see Outer Mongolian Pops Orchestra B, maybe save that listening for another time. You know, so you want to concentrate on the sort of higher quality ensembles, higher quality listening, and find a recording that speaks to you and that's that you can understand deeply. The other thing would be, when we're talking about the listening, listen to the whole piece. Okay, you know, you want to do the opening to Mahler's Fifth, like that's a fairly common orchestral excerpt, right? Don't just listen to the opening. Listen to the whole piece. Okay, the low call from Bizet's Carmen. Listen to the whole opera. Okay, I mean maybe not every day, but I mean like don't just listen to that little thing, because you have to know what comes before it. You have to know what comes after it. Playing these excerpts and so forth when you've got 75 of your closest friends sitting around you is actually not that difficult. But when you have to play it by yourself, then it is a little bit more difficult. So what you have to do is figure out a way to play these excerpts so that it feels like you have all those people sitting around you. And that's the hardest thing. How do you do that? Well, you do it by having such an intense and extensive knowledge of the piece that you're hearing all the other lines and you're able to replicate that passage while you're hearing the other things happening. For example, a very basic example, but like one of the common excerpts will be the opening to Schumann's Second Symphony, which for us is just sort of sustained long tones. Well, if you're just counting to 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, to 1, 2, 3, like that, you're sunk. But if you hear the cellos in your head, dee da 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 dee da dee da 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 dee da, and like that, you'll always be in time, and it'll be easy to play. The second thing that I want to mention about that is replicate the audition. When you're getting ready for an audition, replicate the audition. What I find so many people do is they sit at their house or they sit in the practice room and they play the excerpt over and over again until it starts to sound good. And then they go, oh, okay, and then they turn the page and they go on to the next one. That represents the audition in no way, okay? What you're preparing for has nothing to do with what you're actually going to have to do, which is what I started this session off talking about with the first practice session of the day. Practice doing what you actually have to do, right? What's the audition? The audition is you sit out in the hallway or for 3-4 minutes not able to play. Then you go on stage and you're on. You get one shot, and that's it. Okay? You have one shot to do it, do it. Well, how many people practice doing that? Not enough. Okay? So because we feel weird like sitting out in the hallway in our school or whatever, like waiting for 3 minutes and going in. You can have your friends do that. You can have people who are not your friends do that, because what happens when you're sitting out in that hallway for 3-4 minutes when you're about to go on? Your mind starts racing a little bit. What if I crack the first note? What if I screw up or whatever? Although very few times do people go, hey, what if I sound great? You know what I mean? So all these things start running in your head, and then you get in the hot seat, and a lot of times you don't know what to do because you never practiced doing that before. So in this way, you can practice with that consistency. The last thing that I would say, so 1 is the listening, 2 the actual mock auditions, 3 would be find a really great teacher. Find someone who's doing what you want to do and go learn from them. Okay, anything else? I've either answered everything so thoroughly or bored everyone so thoroughly that no one else has any questions. Okay, well, I want to thank you all for coming to my class today, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you very much.